Listen carefully. My biggest fantasy Premier League tip of the week: ignore every single word that I say because I've had a shocker.
Tipping Liverpool to stay up this year.
Thanks for explaining how the Premier League works then.
Enjoy that now.
No.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Football Times podcast with myself, RadioTimes.com sport editor Michael Potts. And I'm joined in the virtual studio, not by Mr. Jake Wilson, but by BBC Match of the Day magazine deputy editor Lee Stobbs and new FA Cup goal scorer, Mr. Lee Stobbs. How are you doing, sir?
First of all, that is very kind of you to mention that straight off the bat, so I appreciate that. I'm good, Michael. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing well. I mean, I haven't scored in any sort of, domestic cup competitions at all. Tell us about it. Tell us about it. Aylesbury Town, am I right in thinking?
Aylesbury United, yeah. So I play for Aylesbury United, and we had a qualifying game, and I scored in the game. Unfortunately, we actually went out on penalties in that game, and I did miss a penalty, but I did score. So there's that.
You didn't need to say that, man. We could have just left it. You could have been the hero.
We have to be honest.
Nice one. Well, yep, I have not achieved as much during lockdown, but I'm glad you're doing all right. For your first cap of the season.
Yeah, I've been getting my match fitness a little bit. I've been training and I'm ready for some minutes now. So
excellent. Well, that's good stuff. I mean, you've warmed up. We're ready to go. So I'm expecting big things here. In addition to our FA Cup goal scoring hero, we have Mr. David James, former England goalkeeper, not still playing, but could. He'll be joining us for an interview a little bit later on. But first up, we're going to preview some of the big Premier League games on TV this weekend. We're starting on Saturday. It's on Sky Sports Premier League main event and Now TV with Leeds versus Manchester City. And I'd like to start this little preview with an unreserved apology to Mr. Patrick Bamford, who I believe I may have suggested was a David Nugent of sorts, a player who was kind of stuck between leagues, smashed the Championship-ish, and couldn't quite make it in the Premier League. But he's proving me and everybody wrong.
He's one of these players, isn't he? He's had a crack at the Prem a few times. He's never really had a real run, though. And now it seems like in a structure with consistency and a bit of faith in his ability, he's performing. And that's what can happen. I think I looked at his stats at previous clubs in the Prem. He's played 6, 7 or 8 games here or there. But now, I know it's only 3 games, but it's clear that he is, he's Leeds' main striker. He will play. So that little bit of faith is doing well for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And he must have been sort of nervous, I guess, going into the season. Even if he wouldn't admit it, he must have been a little bit feeling the weight of expectation, because I know Leeds fans obviously expecting huge things from their side in the next few years. And knowing that he wasn't always on the right side of the fans, I guess, last season, even when they were coming up. But what a weight off the shoulder. That must be such an amazing feeling. Actually, what's his 3-3 now? Just to get rolling along with Leeds. It's great stuff.
That's it. I guess he just had that tag, didn't he? Like, can he do it in the Prem? You don't want them questions sort of looming over you. And as a striker, as cliche as it is, the only thing you can do is score goals to kind of shake that. And he is. So fair play to him.
Absolutely. And last time out for Leeds, obviously a nice little win over Sheffield United, courtesy of a last-minute Bamford goal. It's probably there in some way. I know they got a lot of praise for their performance against Liverpool. They obviously beat Fulham 4-3, but keeping a clean sheet, a win away from home, that's quite a good sort of professional result for them, isn't it? Really, a nice slick result. It's gonna, you stay up with 1-0s, not 4-3s every week.
That's exactly it. But like, what's not to love about Leeds at the moment? Like, they're just the fittest team in the league. They're kamikaze. Their manager sits on a bucket. Like, they're just brilliant, aren't they? They are box office. So it's brilliant to have them back. And you're right, they've had some good results. And I just think any game that they're in, especially this weekend, like, you're going to get good viewing. And I think this is the game to watch this weekend, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we've seen, obviously, going on to Man City now, we've seen how they've been. I know, obviously, the end of last season, they turned Liverpool over. But teams who go to Man City, teams who go there, press, push, hassle and harry and put a lot of pressure on them, tend to be the teams who get something from City. Maybe a little bit nervous this weekend with Leeds. Going to Leeds. Sorry.
That's it. I think Leeds will quietly fancy themselves, so they might nick something. I think if you get the balls in behind Man City at the moment, they're quite vulnerable, and it seems like their defence still from last season just isn't quite settled. To me, when I look at City and I've watched them so far, I know there hasn't been that many games, but it's just like they're just not ready. They weren't ready for the season to begin. I know a lot of teams probably weren't, but the kind of scale of the challenge that they had to mount again this season to come back and try and win the league, it just kind of seems like they've not been ready. I reckon Leeds could nick it.
Yeah, and you look at it, I'm just looking quickly at the bench as well for City last week. So I went through, it was Cole Palmer, Tommy Doyle, Liam Delap, and you got Zinchenko, Ferran Torres, Laporte coming back to fitness, and then Zach Steffen, the goalkeeper. It's not this sort of deep City that we're used to. I know they've got injury problems. I know Bernardo is sort of coming back and things, but relying on people like Delap to come off the bench, as you know, no disrespect to him at all, absolutely fair play for coming on and scoring a goal at 17. It's just not maybe the same deep, frightening City. I don't know if they've maybe lost a bit of that aura. Teams maybe aren't quite as scared to go up against them. Leicester weren't last week, surely. It's interesting with Aguero and Jesus out, how I know defence is their issue and has been for a while, but even going forward, they maybe lack a little bit of few options up there, maybe.
Yeah, injuries have definitely hit him, haven't they? The one thing they have got at the moment is that Mahrez he's kind of carried on from the end of last season. He looks a lot like the Leicester Mahrez again. He's always dangerous when he's on the ball. But do you know what? Looking at their team, I'm just thinking about Aguero. Like at 32, we always know that he's had these little injuries here and there. At what point does City have to start planning for life without Aguero? They can't just keep shoving Sterling up front. Like he can do a job, as people say, but they need a big striker. And it's sort of a time like this when you go against a Leeds side where a team like Leeds will fancy it because they haven't maybe got that massive goal threat that they would have when someone like Aguero's in the team.
Absolutely. And prediction for this one, I know you've suggested Leeds might nick something here.
I'm really not sure, but I think I'm going to go for a 3-3. I think there's going to be goals at both ends. I think it's going to be a massive, massive blockbuster.
Well, I'm tuning in for the Lee Stobbs weekend of Sky Sports drama because a 3-3 between Leeds and City is what I want to see. I'm going with a narrow City win, but I think goals, I think a 2-1 or a 3-2, just sort of narrowly nicking it. I think it'll be a very, very good game to watch. Moving on to Super Sunday, we have Arsenal versus Sheffield United. It's a 2:00 kickoff, Sky Sports, Premier League main event, Now TV. Arsenal, obviously your team. Have you enjoyed watching them this season? What are your thoughts so far? I watched them on Monday night and I wasn't quite sure what I thought of them, to be fair.
Well, as an Arsenal fan, I'm very content. I mean, first and foremost, I think I've said this on the pod before, that I'm just happy that I've actually got an Arsenal team which I actually like. Like for years, we've had a team where we've been very disappointed in certain areas, but all the players are very likeable. And look, dare I say it, I think Arsenal in general, to even other fans, Arteta has actually made them quite likeable. We've got good characters. He puts faith in young players. He's honest in his interviews. I'm happy with Arsenal and where they're at. I mean, we've got Liverpool again tonight. We don't want to get beaten by Liverpool twice in 1 week, but I'm happy so far.
Yeah, I watched them on Monday. I agree with everything that I really like. I like what Arteta is doing. I really like Arteta himself. I think he speaks so much sense. And obviously you can tell he's come through the Pep Guardiola school of tinkering and toying with tactical innovations.
Oh, definitely.
One which didn't quite get away with this playing around at the back on Monday night. This sort of extreme playing around at the back. I'm all for innovation. I don't want to be sort of, the Steve Bruce school of just hit and hope. Yeah. But I just think they invited so much pressure and Liverpool just didn't fall for it at all. I think their midfield three sort of sat a bit deeper and they were always quite wary of being drawn too high up the pitch. And I think it just made Arsenal maybe look a little bit silly in the end. I don't know. What do you think? Are we going to see a similar thing tonight? Or
I think I quite like it that in a way Arteta, even if he would have seen that, he'd have seen it was a little bit shaky, but he wants to put faith in the players and give them confidence. Even if it doesn't go well, he wants to tell them the next game, I want you to do it again because I have faith in your ability to do it successfully. And I think, against a team like Liverpool, maybe it is daft because they're the best pressers of the ball in the world. But yeah, I like the faith he has in the players to do it. And I think you'll only get better at doing that by continuously doing it and doing it wrong. Liverpool didn't get brilliant and Man City didn't get brilliant at playing out from the back by not making mistakes. They had to make the mistakes to learn from them. And I think that's just the sort of process that Arsenal are going through at the moment. We're chopping and changing a lot of defenders. getting used to like the back four, back three, whatever he plays, and hopefully we'll get better. But against Liverpool, you are going to get found out if you don't do it absolutely to the point.
Yeah, absolutely. And going into this weekend, obviously from one end of the table to the other, we've got Sheffield United up next, bottom of the league, 3 defeats in 3 games. It's not looking ideal for them at the moment, is it? Obviously, had such a fairy tale start to the season under Chris Wilder, and then lockdown came, and they just seemed to lose a bit of that clinical edge. They were sort of winning 1-0s and then drawing 1-1s, and then that started to turn into losing 1-0s, drawing 1-1s. It's goals, isn't it? I mean, I feel like it's very easy to diagnose that problem.
Yeah.
But Ollie Mcburney scored 6 in 36 last season. For their sort of big money signing last year. I feel like it's got a lot of sort of classic hard workers in there, and a lot of players who will run about and who will chase every ball and work hard for the team. All the cliches, we'll bring them all out. I feel like the fans will sort of love you so much for that, and but that credit will run out eventually, and you kind of have to turn that hard work into a very clinical end product. I just worry about them on the goals output.
Yeah, I mean, last season I think they broke even, didn't they? I think they scored about 39 and conceded 39. But Sheffield United have always been built on being difficult to beat. I think they were like that in the Championship. They're like that now. But now they've established themselves as this team in the Premier League as well. They've kind of taken the ethos into the Premier League. I think now is the time to start adding that, a bit different up front, for example. I think they brought in Moussa, which he came on and scored a few goals at the end of last season, but he's had injury problems. But maybe that's why, apparently, they're very desperate to get Brewster in now to change up that attack. They've seen they're looking at David Brooks as well from Bournemouth. So they're clearly trying to add quality and something different in that final third, because, as you say, like McGoldrick, Billy Sharp, McBurney, all quite not the most mobile strikers, kind of link men. So they do need that little bit more up front, don't they, to add goals? Yeah,
Brewster is an interesting one, isn't he? I mean, I don't know where his future lies, but it seems with Jota turning up for Liverpool, getting the start, and Minamino playing there as well, that he may be sort of moved on, loaned out, sold. Who knows what the deal would be? But yeah, you think a little bit extra zip. Bit of something, yeah.
They played Burke in the last game up front, and I think he just ran his socks off basically. But ultimately, they need that. They need a striker with something a little bit different. I think someone like Brewster, that sort of energy, that sort of freshness. I think that's the signing they really need. I've been reading that apparently it's going to be a loan, and Liverpool want around 5 million as a loan fee, and I'm not sure Sheffield United are prepared to pay that. So it depends. I mean, with a week to go, it's one of those that you think probably will get done. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Prediction for this one: Arsenal versus Sheffield United.
I really obviously want to say Arsenal are going to win, but I'm worried. I think it's going to be a 1-1. And the reason for that is because I think people would say this is a good time to play Sheffield United. I actually disagree. I think it's a terrible time, because I imagine Chris Wilder's had them running up hills, dragging tyres around the training pitch. And I just think they're going to be a different animal this weekend. So I'm going to go for a draw.
I can buy that. I can get on board with that, I think. Yeah, again, Arsenal have got all the weapons to win. It's just whether, Sheffield United having Chris Wilder breathing down your neck every week, that is not going to be a pleasant experience, and they'll want to do anything to avoid that. So I may join you with that 1-1 there. And then once that game is over, we have Manchester United versus Spurs. It's a 4:30 kickoff, also on Sky Sports, Premier League main event, and Now TV. Two interesting sides, probably aiming for a similar sort of position this year, both slightly unconvincing, but both with some pretty decent results. It feels like quite an even game, this one, going into it.
Yeah, they're both kind of the nearly men, aren't they? They're both quite nearly there, and this is the game they both really need to win. I think Man United are never too far from a crisis, are they? And after losing to Palace, squeezing past Brighton, like if they don't win this, I think the pressure starts to mount on Ollie. And I know that might be harsh, but that's just what it is when you're a Man United manager, right? If you don't have a great start to the season, the pressure's going to start. So I think Man United need this win massively.
It's funny, I've written down in my notes here, United finding their feet, everything heightened by the media with United. One loss and it's a crisis. One win and it's Fergie reincarnate. So,
Absolutely.
but I agree. The pressure is very much on Solskjaer. He's not a new manager of Man United. I think it's still early days. I think a lot of it, and this could be the case with City as well. Are they sort of ready for the season to go again? I mean, they barely had a break from Europe to the start of the Premier League. They played fewer games than everybody else. Obviously, in the cup games, they've rotated a bit. Fitness could be a bit of an issue for them at the start of the season. You may think.
Definitely, yeah. It looks like they're a little bit leggy, and I guess that's why maybe they started a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, it's the same for everyone, really, isn't it? Give or take a few weeks, it's the same for everyone.
Yeah. And moving on to Spurs. Spurs again. I think they'll be fine this season. I would say. I don't quite know what fine means, but I think it means top six. They dominated. I watched that Newcastle game last week. I mean, they dominated Newcastle from the very first whistle. Son, two off the woodwork, would have killed the game, sort of dead. Another couple of chances that they probably should have tucked away. I don't really think they have like a glaring weakness. I thought they were just, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about the handball rule in a little while, I'm sure. But I just think it was a terrible bit of luck at the end. And I know that's not what people want to hear because that's an easy get out almost for managers. Bad luck went against us. But I actually thought they played very well. And obviously we have Gareth Bale coming in at some point. It's not a bad reinforcement to make. And a new potential friend of the pod, Tanguy and Ndombele. Philip have mentioned him a couple of times, and he's looking like the player we thought he was going to be when Spurs signed him.
Yeah, he's just had a bit of trouble, hasn't he? He's kind of getting into the starting lineup, coming in and out, but we all know he's a great player, and he should be in that midfield. Tottenham are a strange team because they've got such a good squad. We all know they've got amazing players. It's just about them clicking, and quietly, I think they are clicking. And I think if Bale can come in and actually have an impact, then they're going to be very dangerous. That front three is arguably one of the best in the world if they're all absolutely at it. But with Bale, it's hard to know. I think we expect him to be the Bale that we all know from years ago. But for me, he could come in and score, 20 goals, or he might play 10 games and then get sold to China in next summer. It's really hard to predict what we're going to get.
Yeah, same. I wonder about how quickly they can get up to speed. And obviously, if Son's out as well, you kind of, I assume they're both going to be back fit after the international break, which will be interesting to see how it goes from there. But yeah, there's not really, again, repeating it, but I don't think they really have a weakness. As in, there's not one area of their squad where you think, oh, they're really lacking there. I feel like, again, and Ndombele stepping up, looks a bit like sort of Moussa Dembele's heir, almost, sort of carrying the ball from midfield. Yeah, they're just looking pretty good all across the park, and I quite fancy them to go on and have a pretty decent season, even if they are sort of a year or two away from getting back to outskirts of a title challenge. I think they're looking pretty healthy so far. I mean, we're recording this before they get inevitably dumped out of the Europa League tonight, but oh well, let's laugh at that tomorrow.
Always.
Yeah. Prediction for this one: Man United v Spurs.
I have gone for a 2-2.
Fair play. I think I'm going with Spurs. I think I'm going with a narrow, cagey 1-0 win. I fancy them. I fancy
classic
them.
Mourinho.
A classic Mourinho, and that we haven't seen for a while. And yet, for all the full roundup of Premier League fixtures live on TV this weekend, you can check out our fixtures page on radiotimes.com/sport, and we'll keep you in the loop with all the channels, times, and everything else you need to know. Now, we brought you a chat with Manchester United legend Andy Cole last week, and we're following it up with another all-time Premier League great today. He's smiling at me as well. He spent 18 years between the sticks in the top flight, making 572 appearances, keeping 169 clean sheets with 0 goals, which was a slight disappointment. We're joined by former Liverpool, Man City and England goalkeeper David James. Thank you very much for joining me, sir. How are you doing?
My pleasure, thank you very much. Yeah, the 0 goals is a bit of a disappointment considering I had all of those minutes up front for Man City.
Yeah.
You'd have thought I'd back 1 or 2, wouldn't you?
I had a look. You had 2 assists, so that's something. That's some fantasy points there. But
18 years, I'm not. Yeah, it's not the sort of form to be put in a fantasy football team, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. But the clean sheets will have done. I actually had a look. I was doing my research. You've made 1,001 appearances over your career. Does it feel like 1,001 appearances?
I think that number is
that right? I think that was for club and country in all competitions.
No, my thousandth appearance was in Iceland.
Oh, fair play. Okay.
For a team called IBV, and we played Fylkir 1-0.
Nice.
To celebrate we celebrated anyway, but it was a 1,000th appearance. Then I went on to play in India, so I think the number might be close to 115.
Oh, fair play. I mean,
1,015.
Yeah. There's my research blown out the water. Thanks for that. Excellent. So I'm genuinely fascinated by goalkeeping, because I don't understand goalkeeping. I feel like there's been a few sort of goalkeeping firestorms at the minute. There's a few keepers under pressure, and not very many goalkeeping pundits who can actually sort of are there to tell us about why they're so performing so poorly, etc. Do you get frustrated sometimes when you see outfield players trying to teach you your art, I guess?
Well, I'm going to say no, because arguably then as a goalkeeping pundit I couldn't talk about outfield play, so I wouldn't say that. I think the problem is it is, like you said, a unique position in so many different ways, and actually understanding what a mistake is a difficulty, as opposed to thinking that you've seen something go wrong, because once it's in the back of the net, then arguably something has gone wrong. So I get frustrated when people don't actually realise what the problem is. And so often, and what's been happening in recent times, I think you'll find there's some goalkeepers getting a lot of stick, and it's not always down to their mistakes. But that's the nature of the business, and criticism was aimed at me. I don't know why. It happened to me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come to a few individual keepers in a moment. I guess what can you alluded to it there? Sort of what can fans look out for from a goalkeeper's performance to sort of assess that performance? What sort of mistakes can a fan sort of look out for, really?
Well, I suppose one going through the legs is a clear indicator.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's difficult to say. I mean, the problem is, and I follow other sports, and I'm not blessed with having sort of participated in them. So you rely a lot on the said expert to give you an indication, and quite often they haven't done it either. So it's very difficult. I mean, if it's clear and obvious, and it sounds like the handball debate now, doesn't it? If it's clear and obvious, then it's usually a mistake. But as I say, when you're sort of the brunt of a lot of criticism, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to be making mistakes. I think just enjoy the game. Don't get too worried about it, unless it's your team, of course, and then you can have a go.
Yeah, for sure. Going into the specific keepers now, we've seen Jordan Pickford having a bit of a tough time. Obviously, a hero at the World Cup, a hometown hero of mine, as you can tell probably from the accent. I guess, what do you make of Pickford this season, or even the last sort of season and a half? And do you think the criticism was fair?
Well, I think this season, we're only obviously new into the season, aren't we? I think this season for England, in the games he's played, faultless. 2 clean sheets. I think he's done well there. I think for Everton, there was some criticism aimed at him. I think it was in the cup, wasn't it, the other day?
Yeah.
But they still went through. And it's one of those things, have a bad game and win, then you're happy. And I just think that, again, the sort of the piled on criticism is unjustified in the large amount. What he's doing for England justifies him being selected for England again. So I don't necessarily see a problem at international level. Obviously, if you're in a run of bad form, and I don't think Jordan Pickford is at the moment, I just don't think he's attaining the heights that he had been doing to get him in the position of England's number one.
Sure.
But if you were in a run of bad form, then eventually these mistakes are going to lead to losing games. And but Jordan Pickford is not in that position at the moment, so I'm not adding any fuel to that argument.
Yep.
I think he'll be all right. He's a young man with a great future ahead of him. As if to say he hasn't had a great career so far.
Of course. He had me standing on a table, I believe, in a bar from that Colombia penalty. So, and David De Gea, obviously, there's an interesting sort of Man United development with Henderson going back there, and the sort of that, will he, won't he get in that number one spot? How do you sort of rate both of those keepers from what you've seen of them so far? Obviously, De Gea has had his critics as well in recent times.
Yeah, I think dare I say a nice thing, and it's got nothing to do with my affiliations to any other club, and not Manchester, of course, but the nice thing is that we've got an English keeper competing with a goalkeeper which in the last 4 years, 5 years even, has been regarded as one of the best in the world, in Europe definitely, but one of the best in the world. So the fact that we've got a goalkeeper in Henderson who's gone back, I didn't see the game the other night against Luton, but apparently he was, again, involved in keeping a clean sheet, highly with a massive save, and therefore allowing Man United to put on, was it, £200 million worth of substitutes to finally run. I'm a Luton Town fan as well, so that hurt even more.
Oh man, not bad, bringing 200 million off the bench.
The idea that, as I say, Hendo's had a fantastic season last year with Sheffield United, as everybody knows. The fact that he can go back to Manchester United and put up an argument is refreshing. Yeah. Obviously, David De Gea has, as I say, for the last 4 or 5 years has been outstanding, and therefore it's going to be a tough ask even for Hendo to take his place, which, going back to Jordan Pickford, makes Jordan Pickford's position a little bit more comfortable, you would argue.
Absolutely. And the final one, probably the most under fire, under pressure goalkeeper is Kepa Arrizabalaga for Chelsea, to the point where they've now actually gone and sort of signed a potential replacement. Caballero's sort of starting there as well. Do you think it's quite harsh? He's a young keeper. He's come over to the Premier League. He's had a season and not quite hit the heights. But to sort of look like they're trying to replace him or edge him out already, does that seem quite premature to you?
I don't know Frank. I don't know Frank's reasoning for signing Mendy, other than Mendy is 28 years old. I think he's more of a challenger or a better support act, if you like, than possibly Willy Caballero. I'd like Kepa. I'd liked him when they signed him. Yes, he hasn't had the greatest of starts. I think it's 2 years now, isn't it? He's at Chelsea. But the potential he's got, and especially when you consider they spent £71 million on him, you would expect him to, even if he loses his place, which he did last match, even if he loses it for a short period of time, to rebuild him, to get him back to what would be a £71 million goalkeeper. I mean, he's got all the capabilities, just perhaps hasn't got the confidence at the moment. And I say that because he looks like it, not because other people are saying it. And obviously, when he's not playing, then Frank has got other ideas at the time now. But long term, Kepa should be the solution. I don't think Mendy is Chelsea's first team goalkeeper. Put it that way.
And do you think you've mentioned their confidence? That seems like a massive part of goalkeeping. Just having that, once you get into a good run of form, it just seems to go for you. When things go against you, it just seems to keep going against you. Do you think that's the case with a position like goalkeeper?
Yeah, and people talk about momentum. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but confidence like momentum. The idea that winning a game and then winning the next game or keeping a clean sheet one after the other will mean you'll be more confident going into the next match. And if you're good, that should mean a win. If you look at Bayern Munich this weekend, on the back of 23 consecutive wins, then the 24th should be easy. Yeah. And then being beat 4-1 by Hoffenheim. So, it's like confidence is not so much the actual performances, it's what you do in between. And I think looking at Kepa, it would have been very difficult to find confidence in training sessions if the performances themselves aren't working, and also because the game's been coming thick and fast. So sometimes you need the breathe. We've got an international break coming up. So maybe the international break will be an opportunity for him to, dare I say, get his head straight, come back into Chelsea, get back into training and get back hopefully to playing and, as I say, proving his worth.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess, and finally, sort of going from one end of the scale from Premier League goalkeepers to where you are right now, you're back at your old stomping ground, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, Welwyn Garden City is the town I was grew up in. Welwyn Garden City Football Club, which is a grassroots football club here in Welwyn Garden. And yes, I'm here with Utilita with our Switch Before Pitch campaign, because the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, as football fans, has affected everybody, not only financially, obviously, with regards to the ability to generate or participate in football. And with the report, it shows that there's a potential that we could lose 10% of our grassroots football clubs. And as I stand here in the bar talking to you, in the bar, not in the bar, I'm in a club. Just to clarify, this part of the bar's club. the idea that people can't play football, but more importantly on a community level, people can't fully access the facilities, and with restrictions in the bar, not only in distancing, social distancing, but also with the fact that the close time now is 10 o'clock, that's going to have an impact on the grassroots club's ability to earn money. And then you add in all the other factors that they're not able to utilise all the facilities in the current climate. That's going to have another impact on grassroots football. And as I say, this report highlights that so well that it's quite scary. And Wellington City Football Club is just one typical grassroots football club which you will see across the whole country, even up where you are.
Yeah, and it's so important, isn't it? Where you see Jamie Vardy scoring a hat-trick from like this non-league wonder story, and then it's so important to that these football clubs survive from the very bottom grassroots level to the upper non-league to the lower leagues.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting when you mentioned Jamie Vardy, of course, because he is the great success story. Apologise to any Manchester City fans out there, but what he did was courtesy of being in the system. But when it comes to grassroots, we're talking kids as young as I was beaten in a penalties the other day by some 10-year-olds. You're going from young kids all the way through to 50-year-olds. I mean, I use this facility with my mates for five-a-side games. So nice. The club itself, as a grassroots club, offers so much to the community, and that's the bit that I'm worried about, or the report highlights, and that has become a concern, because it is affecting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people when you add them all up with regards to their involvement in the community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time, David, and absolute best of luck to the club and to yourself, and fingers crossed that some support comes their way from the powers that be.
Thank you. Jordan Henderson, legend.
That's what we like to hear. David James there, slipping in a shout out to the great man, Jordan Henderson, for no apparent reason other than he heard my voice. Big love, David, big love. Now, moving on, listen carefully. My biggest fantasy Premier League tip of the week: ignore every single word that I say, because I've had a shocker.
Oh no, what's happened? Come on.
Oh, I wildcarded last week. And
how did you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's not great. It's not ideal. I had Jimenez up top. Which, I already had Jimenez, but that didn't go too well for me.
Did you get over 40 points?
I think it was 38, I think.
Anything below 40 is just not good enough, is it?
It's not, is it? No, thanks. I between my three Wolves players, I think it was Cody, Podence and Jimenez. My three Wolves players combined got -1. Which,
I'm still waiting for Podence to come alive. I thought he was my masterstroke at like 5.5 million or 5 million, whatever he is.
Yeah.
He's still not quite. I think he got an assist.
Very cheap. Yeah. So don't listen to anything I say, basically. This week I've taken Son out. I've done a little bit of economics, shuffling around, taken Son out, and managed to squeeze Salah in there as well. So Salah and De Bruyne both in there. I had quite a strong bench, so I've kind of, I've reassigned finances, we'll call it. Do you have any top tips for me? Please help me.
For me, I've just gone Son and Martial out, and I've gone Mahrez and Vardy in. For Mahrez, I just think after his last game of a goal and assist, I just think he's going to come back in. I think that Leeds game is going to be so open, and I just think that he can easily have a big impact on that. So I've gone for Mahrez, and I might even captain him.
Ooh, that's a shout. I've got De Bruyne, and I had Foden as a sort of one expensive-ish bench player, but now he's going to come into the first team. It's quite like, I feel like he's going to start
getting the call up
now. He's getting the call up. Come on, Phil, big Phil, come on. Also backing Danny Ings. Feel like he's been overlooked a little bit.
Yeah, he's a bit more scoring, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a bit more expensive this time around, but he's got goals in his last 2 games. Very tasty little fixture list coming up with West Brom at home next, Chelsea away, which is a free-for-all, and then Everton, Villa, Newcastle, Wolves coming up. So fancying Danny Ings and defenders, not really many clean sheets flying around, so you might as well pick up Timothy, here's the pronunciation, Castagna?
Yes, I think that's about right. I'll give you that.
I'm going to go with that. Picking up assists, 3 in 2 games without the clean sheet, so you might as well. while nobody is picking a clean sheet.
Calvert-Lewin for me, he's a must-have at 7.2 million, 2 hat-tricks in 2 games. He has to be in everyone's team, surely.
I'm looking forward to him sort of winning the Euros for England next year. I think I tweeted that out yesterday.
That's the hope we all have, right? But he probably won't even be named in the squad. But
I'm not saying I'm on the bandwagon or anything or making any knee-jerk calls, but he will definitely be slipping through the winner in that final next year.
And I've ordered my Calvert-Lewin England shirt already, so...
Yeah, get on it. And now finally, I've been putting this off because it's just a stressful situation. But we're going to bring in some chats, some features over the weeks throughout the revamped Football Times podcast. And I feel like there's only one talking point this week, and it's handball. As mentioned, Spurs dealt a bit of a cruel blow at the end, or in my opinion, it was a cruel blow. With a last-minute penalty against Eric Dyer, who handled the ball without even seeing the ball. Now, Mr. Stobbs, remove those Arsenal glasses. I don't want to have any red and white lenses for this. What did you make of that decision?
It's ludicrous, isn't it? It's not handball. It's just there's no sort of common sense being used. I think everyone is on the same page with this, aren't they? To put it simply, it's just all very boring, isn't it? Talking about all these decisions all the time. I said to my dad the other day, every time me and him speak about football after a weekend of games, all we do is talk about decisions, like VAR mistakes and things like calls that we don't agree with. Like, when was the last time we said to each other, oh, this wonder kid's doing well, or what a goal that was? It's always about these decisions. And I just think a few of these laws, particularly the handball one, has been made too intricate. There's too much detail, and the fun is not there anymore. And I think a lot of managers have expressed that.
I actually had a very similar train of thought at the weekend. I Match of the Day, I sort of don't quite get the same buzz when Match of the Day comes around now, because obviously, and it's not their fault. It's not the guy's fault. Oh my goodness, I'm talking to Match of the Day magazine deputy editor. Oh no! Here we go then.
Change the narrative.
It's not their fault at all, but I feel like when it comes to highlights, all highlights shows, because there are others available. But I feel like a lot of they've got to show these VAR decisions, these VAR calls. But every game sort of has 2 or 3 now, and very big calls. And so you spend most of the highlights package where I want to be watching, X, Y, or Z smashing in top bin volleys and all that sort of stuff. I feel like so much time now is dedicated to this drawing lines on screens and all that sort of stuff. And that is obviously not the fault of any broadcaster. That's just kind of they're reporting on the action. But the action now is done in a trailer halfway up the other end of the country.
That's it.
And the handball rules, obviously, I know obviously this wasn't a VAR fault because they were actually applying the law correctly.
Yes.
But you do just wonder what is the end goal here? Like what were IFAB, the lawmakers, the guys in charge, what are they trying to achieve with this rule? I just don't quite see how this enhances football.
I guess they're just trying to go so forensic to the point where they just want to make sure everyone's happy and everyone it's just too much. Basically, it's too much. You just need to now strip it back and apply common sense to it, really, don't we? It's confusing. It's robotic. There's not much logic there. It's almost like the rules have been made by people that haven't watched football. Like, that's how ridiculous it is. It's almost like every single person agrees with this, apart from the people that need to make the law.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know the law, I mean, that's basically everyone. But laws, IFAB have instructed that if a ball strikes a player who has made their body, and then in quotes, unnaturally bigger, then they will be punished. And very rarely the arm being above the shoulder is a natural position, other than when a player is falling, which is why that was given against Dyer. But I almost think there's a weird bit of irony here, because they're saying this talk about natural positions, but then also saying that players have to alter the way they jump. So surely the natural jumping mechanism, surely that is a natural action.
Everyone's and by jump like a pencil with their arms stuck to their sides.
Yeah, to get a natural position while jumping, you have to jump unnaturally. Is essentially what is going on there, and I just don't see it. I do not see it.
It's madness. Am I right in saying that on the Premier League trying to alter the rule and they're trying to alter a section of it to try and just bring it to the Premier League to be different?
Yeah, and that's the final bit I was going to come on to there. They are pushing for some sort of change to the rule, some sort of softening. I think for now they're advising referees to be more subjective in their approach, which is obviously going to clear everything up, and we'll all be happy and fine after this weekend.
The only annoying thing with that for me is that to have a rule changed halfway through the season, albeit right, that's what everyone wants, is that now like Tottenham have suffered from the old rule, and obviously other teams will now benefit from it being different, if you know what I mean. But I guess it needs to be changed.
It's one of those, it feels quite early in the season, and to prevent it from happening every week for the rest of the year, you hope something could change now before it's 36 games in and you change it for the last week. We'll see. But hopefully we never have to talk about decisions ever again.
Hopefully we can enjoy football more.
Hopefully we can enjoy football. And hopefully we can enjoy Match of the Day even more than we already do, which is what I do. No slight on them whatsoever, just purely I don't like VAR decisions and handball decisions. So what is in the magazine this week, Mr. Lee Stobbs?
This week's magazine is for nostalgic football fans. So we've got our league ladders. So you get a wall chart, all the little team shirts to track the table all through the season. That's for the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, and the Scottish Premier League. Apart from that, we've got FIFA 21 guide because the game comes out next week. So that's quite an exciting time. And of course, we've got the new season match tax. So any young collectors out there can get their hands on the new cards.
Or old collectors.
Old collectors, of course, yeah.
I'm missing my sort of weekly instalment of Rogue Sunderland players from 10 years ago. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee Stobbs. It's a pleasure to see you again. We will be back in the studio, and our silky tones will come across on the nice microphones in the near future.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
But anytime. And in the meantime, you can come to radiotimes.com/sport. We've got pretty much every sport. If it's on TV, we're covering it. We've got French Open coming up in the next week, Premier League fixtures, and then there's an international break next week. So you get the lowdown on England coming up, on Wales coming up. Whether Gareth Bale's going to take part, who knows? Spurs fans, you're interested again. Thank you very much for listening, and speak to you next week. See you later. Cheers.